Alright. I'm an attempt to learn more about dictionaries and inventory systems in general. Found another tutorial. This one is by Devlog Logan. Subscribe. Yeah, I know. It's another inventory. One tutorial wasn't enough after going through a couple of them. It doesn't stop here. Inventories are difficult. They're complicated, especially for someone at my skill level. They're really my first foray into that kind of data structure, passing information and using signals. And, oh man, for some reason, the syntax used for creating a signal and connecting a signal up in code is something about the way that it works. My brain just cannot process it in a way that I can understand. Haven't done this tutorial yet, but it seems to be comprehensive. I'm going to go through, follow along. I have my test scenes set up. So I have the same world, lights, character, items, other items. I don't know what it is. Anyways, items, other items that I want to interact and not interact with. And so here I'm hoping I can follow along with the tutorial and set up the inventory system and understand what's happening and be able to manipulate it to do what I want. And even if his exact code doesn't work, hopefully I can either figure it out or it will help me better understand what's going on, so I can at least write something on my own that will work, that won't be as encumbersome as it could be. Because the other way I do is I store everything as a variable, and as each individual scene with its own variables, the script and variables built into it, which can get very overbearing, as I saw during the game jam. So I want to really figure this out because it'll help keep things more contained. Alright, time to take a break, but this tutorial is going really well. I feel like I have a better grasp of how everything's laid out and how it's structured, so that I should be able to go in and manipulate it and make it do what I want it to do without it breaking. I also feel like I'm getting a better grasp on how to set these things up with all the different functions, calling different functions, and like ifs and nots and the different loops. I mean, I still have so much to learn, and there's still so much that I just can tell I'm scratching the surface of understanding with it. But I need to take a break. I'll probably go take a walk, exercise, do something. But at least it's coming along. Feeling better about this. If I can get this done today, then at work this week, hopefully I'll be able to keep on working on building out the rest of the single room level and connecting that up, and just getting it up to a prototype. If I can get the inventory working, I think I might be able to have the prototype running in 2 weeks, maybe. If the inventory works, then I might believe the prototype done in 2 weeks, because I think once the inventory works and I can interact with items, pick up items, all that stuff, then that's the game as far as the mechanics. Everything else is at that point logical deduction, thought stuff. So I need to take a break though. Blindly optimistic about how long this is going to take, and honestly, maybe it would have taken that long, but I didn't focus on just making a prototype. I kept adding things and adding things and adding things and wanting there to be a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. And in hindsight, I can see how that kind of scope creep is so insidious, and how it can bloat out a project so much. And it just kept pushing the project further back from that week-to-week goal to, 3-4 months. And now I'm here. I'm gonna finish up the tutorial, get that in. There's a couple things I need to do. One is I need to change the way that I'm instantiating things. This only lets me preload the single scene, the single mesh, and I think if I use a mesh library, I could put all of my meshes into the library, and then instead of instantiating this address, I would instead go into the mesh library and just grab one out of there. I'd have to look up see how to do that. But if I can do that, then that's all I have to do is plug that mesh library into this spot, and it should, or whatever the variable for the mesh library is, and then hook it up so that the items have probably the index number in the mesh library. We'll call that. That way, when they're picked up or dropped, it will just get that. Because right now I can only drop that mesh because the tutorial uses a texture atlas and 2D assets to populate everything. So it's just that one texture, and all the programming stuff, because it's in the item data, it doesn't matter what is there. You can have something that looks the same or something that looks different, and they can be completely different things because item data is where the information is. It's not stored in the scene of the mesh itself, which is smart. I mean, really smart. Not how I would have thought of doing it. If I was to just do this on my own, I'd been like, yeah, I'll put all the item data in the item, so when you pick up the item, you have the data, duh. But that, if you think about it further out, that doesn't make sense, because then every item has its own individual data, even things like bullets or things that you might make millions of. If it's all its own individual thing, that means your computer has to handle all this stuff. Whereas if it's all one thing copied when you need it, and then changed when it needs to be changed, it's a lot less processing power, I guess, but it makes sense. At least that's how I'm making sense of it in my head. So I need to I need to adjust that for what I want to do, and then I'm going to adjust it so that instead of having the raycast and collision detection on the object, I'm going to put it on the player, with that other tutorial I had where it would highlight the object when you got close, and then you could interact to pick it up. I'm going to set it up like that so that your interaction isn't immediate. That way you can come over to the computer and it will highlight, and then I think I can use the nearest its detection system to also get it so that it only highlights the one that's nearest. So they would have to set the highlight. There would be two highlight features. That's what I need. I need two highlight features. I need one that highlights when you're close, you can see objects you can interact with, and one that highlights when you can interact with the item. I just figured that out, so that's good to know. The way that all that works, having an object as a mesh in a mesh library, so you can instantiate the visual identity of the object, but its meaning, the things that make it do and work and function, are then stored somewhere else as data in a structure. Getting my mind to kind of wrap itself around that way of thinking about an object, instead of thinking it in the way that I normally think of an object as an artist, which is, it is a thing which is inherently filled with meaning and significance that is relevant culturally as well as, personally to you and the viewer. Is a thing that is in communication with the viewer and the space and the other objects within that space. The meaning of the object is inherent as well as implied and not implied. Sometimes it is conceptual, conceived, has to be understood within the context with which it was made and where it's from. There's so much nuance to what an object can be as an art object, or even just a object for someone to interact with. Even just looking at the way that objects and objecthood, interrogate space and works within it. Here, that's not at all. It's still kind of, but not really, because it's a virtual thing. It is not, there's no gravity to fight. There's no worry about that kind of thing. And so that dynamic difference in thinking about the space that it exists in has been more difficult than I thought to kind of switch my head. It's just a word object. It shouldn't really hold that much significance to me, but it really does, and it's caused it to be, I think, more difficult to kind of wrap my head around some of the way that these data structures move back and forth. And, you know, that's why having to figure out something like, oh, a 2D texture that needs to be instantiated from a texture atlas, which is just, you know, a bunch of pictures in a grid, and then instead of showing the entire picture, you just show the one little grid picture. And that way you only have one texture that you're loading in, but you can get 32 different images out of it. And this is the way the tutorial used it to set up the icons, the items. But the way I'm using it, I need a 3D scene instance instead of that. And figuring out how to do that is just, it is hurting my head, but overcoming that is the joy of the project. Oh, that's what we call success, baby. Okay, it works. Yay. I don't know what bugs is going to come from this, but I do know that if I can figure out how to access the item's path dynamically through code, then I can automatically have it. So I don't gotta do this for every one. I'll just have to do whatever the mesh is will automatically fill it. So let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Nothing is better than overcoming a problem you didn't know how to beat. You know, having your idea work after a few tries, iterating it and refining it until it clicks and it just happens. That is such a great feeling. You know, one issue solved, and this is where the scope creep starts to happen. I'm feeling good. I can do this. I just have to, you know, maybe I'll take a little break and I'll flesh things out before I keep working the prototype. I'll add a couple plants, add a little bit of this, some walls, some lights. Oh, and need some puzzles because it's a puzzle game. And I'll add this and that. And, you know, it just balloons from there into a slightly larger project than I initially intended. But that's it for me for this time. Hope y'all are having a good new year. Thanks so much, and but that's it for me. Thanks for watching. If you could do all the YouTube things, subscribe, sub, bell, ring, all that stuff. For me, it's super cool watching it happen. It always brings me a little joy. And for you, it's just a simple thing, and I'd really appreciate it. For those of you who've already done that, thanks so much. It really does make me smile every time I put something out here and someone else just stumbles upon it and sees it and, you know, checks it out. So thanks a lot, and I hope you had a great 2024. I hope you have a great 2025. I'll see you next year.